Today we're talking about personal development. We're going to get into how we can evolve and refine our skills to find out more about who we are and what we want out of life. So stay tuned, it's story time. This video is about season 3, episode 14, which was titled, I'm Ready for My Close-Up. And in this episode of Living Single, Khadijah asks Maxine to write a legal article for the magazine Flavor. And Max is like, yeah, I'll write it, for a free meal and a headshot being posted in the video. And some of you will remember that episode, and I'll put a picture here to show you what Max's headshot would have looked like if Khadijah had let it go in the magazine. After Max writes the article, she asks Khadijah for feedback about the article. And Khadijah is like giving her a bit of criticism about the article, telling her a couple things she'd like to change. And Max just blows it out of the water. She can't take the criticism at all. And Khadijah is like, what? So I'm going to play this clip where you can see Khadijah giving feedback to Max about her article. Watch this.
No, I don't want this to end up being one of those puff pieces that fill up your magazine. You know, you never could take criticism. Well, why even ask you to do this assignment? Who says I can't take criticism? I enjoy criticism of any kind. Go ahead, criticize me.
Oh, wait, no. Please, allow me. Maxine, you are as abrasive as sandpaper, as caustic as acid, and as obnoxious as only you can be. God, that felt good.
That's right. And of course, Kyle would be the first person to give feedback to Max because he just wants to make her feel bad, of course. But how many of us struggle with criticism? I know with me, if it's something that I'm really nervous about doing anyways, when I get criticism, I'm just like,
Nobody like you, no way.
and it's difficult. It's difficult to accept when people have feedback for you and it's something you genuinely didn't see about yourself. Like even with making YouTube videos, I do public speaking, I'm an instructor, so my facial expressions are like second nature to the people I work with on a daily basis. But when you're recording a video and your eyebrows are going up and down and your face is squinting, like things like that, some people become distracted by it. People who are watching the video were like, you do a lot of facial expressions, and I'm like, nobody asked you to give me feedback. No, but it's helpful information, because if it's distracting people from what I'm saying, then I want to be conscious of that and try to minimize that as much as possible. But you know, it's also facial expression, so you can only control it so much. You should definitely watch the rest of this episode because it's quite hilarious. And we're not really getting into the part where the title comes from, because the title is I'm Ready for My Close-Up. And that's more focused on Sinclair's experience with acting, more so than Max's experience with writing Khadijah's article. So we're focusing on Max and Khadijah's interaction. Holidays just passed, Valentine's Day, and a lot of us who were single got a lot of feedback about why we were possibly single, or somebody told us like, oh, it's difficult for people to approach you. I think it's a perfect time to talk about traits and characteristics that people feel hold single people back from finding a partner or being in a healthy relationship. Some criticisms that people can receive while single about not having a spouse might be that they're too judgmental, or their expectations are too high, or they have a coarse demeanor. All of these things are things that you hear, you know, like stereotypes of angry black woman, the overly aggressive male. All of those things can interfere with you finding a partner. Yes, that can be true, but then there are also times where those criticisms aren't as warranted as people may believe. For example, when Khadijah is talking to Max about her writing, she says that it's a bit too like stiff and too dry, like the readers won't really engage or appreciate what she's saying. As the editor, that's a great critique, because you want your readers to actually be engaged with what they're reading. And if it's too dry, or there are too many words that aren't easily understood, like it's not an everyday vocabulary word, it can be difficult for people to follow along. I know there are tons of people out there who like to incorporate like GRE words into their everyday conversation. I'm definitely not one of them. But communicating with them, we all know those people, and it's like, it's difficult to follow along sometimes. That may be a valid criticism. Being unable to take criticism well is also a characteristic that you want to work on. We talked about getting feedback from someone you trust about who you are and what they think about you, right? That was a great step, and some people actually try to do that and reached out to me and let me know, and that was great. It's great that you're taking all of the steps to become a better person. At the same time, evaluating whether or not the comments that they give you are valid is important, right? You don't want someone to tell you, oh, I don't think you're like open enough or understanding enough, and then you become a doormat for excuses, right? You allow people to give you excuse after excuse, and you never challenge people to uphold their word. That characteristic you have to take with a grain of salt. You want to be understanding, but at the same time, you don't want to allow people to take advantage of you. And so there's a very fine line. So we've all just experienced a lot of feedback after Valentine's Day. And now it's a great time to sit back and think about some of those and see what's valid and what's invalid. What can we take to grow and become a better person? And what do we just need to let go with a win? You know, we don't need everybody criticism. It's okay. But some things might have been helpful. And so that's what we're going to focus on today and see how that can make us become a better person. So we're going to talk about two things. Number one, how to recognize when a criticism is valid, and two, how to remain true to who you are. It's so difficult to take criticism and not immediately internalize the criticism as you're doing something wrong. Everything you do is wrong. Instead of hearing that when someone tells you like, oh, I think you should reread that again, you should take it as, oh, let me revisit this, see if there's anything I'd like to change or alter or anything. Like one great and quick example that I can think of when I think about taking criticism, I recently watched the Demi Lovato documentary. And in the documentary, like, please watch it. It was great, phenomenal. I'm a new fan. In the documentary, Demi Lovato has this issue with anger and drugs and a couple other things. And her manager and people around her who really, really care about her are like trying to encourage her to get help. She just wasn't hearing it. Like, she wasn't taking it. And they pleaded with her and tried over and over and over again. And it wasn't until they said they'd walk away from her that she really acknowledged the fact that she needed help and began to act on it. I think that sometimes we need those people who are closest to us to really get aggressive with us about like the things we need to work on, the life changes that we need to make. But we know that that's always done in love, right? Some days we already feel like crap. We don't need to be made to feel like crap intentionally. If this isn't a trusted person, then do not listen to them. Do not accept what they're saying as your truth. You have the ability to discern with your own spirit what's you and what's not you. And then ask another person, right? Hey, I was talking to so-and-so and they told me like I might have an anger problem. You think that's true? Like, do I tend to be snappy with you, or do you think I have a short fuse? Am I easily triggered? Do you think like I don't take time to actually hear people out before I respond to them? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, give me some feedback. And then see if they say something that's consistent with that. And if they do and you still don't see it, go ask another person, right? Find as many people as possible who you trust who can give you feedback about who you are so that you can really discern what is you and what's not you before you go changing things, right? It's like going to get your car fixed and you don't know what the problem is and you're like, well, run a diagnostics test, right? And then tell me what the problem is. You want to run your diagnostics test. You don't just want to get it up under the hood and start fixing stuff and ripping wires and pouring liquid in places it don't belong. You want to know what you need to work on and have like a legitimate area that you want to focus on before you start revamping who you are as a person in your entire life and way of being. Well, the second thing we were discussing is how to remain true to who you are. And that's kind of what we've been getting into. And the number one thing you need to remember is that self-improvement takes time. It takes time to figure out what things you need to remove, what things you need to keep, what things you really are attached to and for what reasons you're attached to it. Because, sometimes it's like for example, swearing. Oh my gosh, here we go. Big moment. Swearing. So many of us have a problem with swearing. Raise your hand if you have a problem with swearing. And it's not a huge problem, but it is something that I could do away with, you know? And the trick is I like grew up and my granny had a couple favorite words, and so when I would stay with my granny, like I became attached to those same words and using them over and over and over again. Swearing is a trait or a characteristic, like, or a habit. It's a habit. Swearing is a habit that we should all try to do away with if possible, you know? Sometimes it's like, but there are no words in the English language other than these that give me the oomph I need when I need to say what I need to say. You gotta try harder. You gotta try harder. That's what it comes down to. You gotta go harder, like cold turkey on it. You definitely do, because it's possible. And if you feel like that's gonna make you a better person, then do it, you know, because it's not worth it. It's not. In addition to acknowledging the fact that self-improvement takes time, you also need to appreciate who you were created to be in the first place, right? Appreciate the fact that you're creative or you've got these quirks or something isn't necessarily always together when you try to speak or say what you're feeling or thinking. Like, appreciate that. Let that speak to who you are as a person, as a friend, as a lover, as a companion, as a daughter, as a son, like all of that. Let it speak to who you are and appreciate that. Appreciate the fact that you would like to grow in some areas, but you were a beautiful person when it all started, right? You were beautifully created, and there's nothing tragic about your story. I actually have a blog post entitled "I'm Not Your Tragedy," and I'll link that in the box below and put a picture right here. But recognizing that you're beautiful, right? You were a fearless creature. You were a fierce creature when God created you. And that's a beautiful thing to embody and to internalize as you try to discern like what other things you need and can get rid of. Today's video is really short, but next week we're going to get further into how to live in relationship with other people once we discovered this new way of being that we want to pursue. So stay tuned until next week. It was great being with you all. I'll talk to you later.